Policy Roundtable is a platform set up to interact and interface with policymakers, change agents, stakeholders, and interested Nigerians on matters of national importance. The need to have the right policies in place to fix these looming questions cannot be overemphasized. Hence, we enjoin you to join the conversation today.
Before we would like to formally introduce our special guest speaker for today, and all the present, and Dr. Salisu Bakare. A round of applause, please. He is a Director of Research and Development, TETFUND. Thank you very much, sir, for being here today. We also have in our midst today other special guests of honor, the directors of and founders of Area I, if I'm getting that very correctly. Area I, Mr. Gideon. I missed your name, I'm very sorry. So Mr. Gideon, please. Thank you very much. Also we have now Mr. Kinsley Tim. Am I correct? Yes, founder of Nigeria Reads. Thank you very much. Now we also have more people joining us online. We have a whole lot of virtual guests joining us online at the Policy Roundtable. And I'm very certain that today's session is going to be a whole lot of amazing feats. Because, like I said earlier to a friend of mine, that the COVID did not just disrupt our economy, it disrupted our education, it disrupted a whole lot of stuff. So we have to understand, to know, to be able to resolve. Okay, yes, someone else joining us online is Mrs. Judith Adegboye, representing Circles of Africa. A round of applause for that. Thank you very much. Respecting more guests to which we're going to be introduced to in no further time. We're going to be taking the welcome address by the convener. And the convener is no other person than Mr. Olubunmi Samuel Ayotunji.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. We're very sorry we started late. Some persons will still join us. Quick one, right? History, they say, is not kind to persons that do not learn from it. Nigeria, our case has been one of many, many pitfalls, the lamentative morals, complaints about government's inability to fix things and all that, without any viable solutions at all. It's so terrible in the educational sector that on March 20th this year, the House of Reps held a special session for education. It has never happened. The House had to convene on an emergency session to fix the educational sector. And I think the speaker on that day gave a very well-worded speech of about 24 paragraphs. And I picked 4 out of the 24 paragraphs And I think the paragraphs I picked would actually guide what we'll be talking about here. Those paragraphs are as powerful as they are very vague, in my opinion. So I crave your indulgence to read through. And he said, we have come here today to consider the matter of the millions of children in our country who are out of school and who as a result are denied their fundamental right to receive the training and skill acquisitions opportunities that we allow them to have better lives than their parents before them, and provide a better future for their offspring. Mr. Speaker said, we are here to consider the failures of policy development and implementation, the vagaries of culture and religion that have contributed to the plight of these young people. We are here to advance solutions to this problem. If we do nothing else today, let us take advantage of this special session to tell ourselves the reality, so that we may liberate ourselves from the shackles of limited thought, and through our collective efforts, achieve the vision of a nation where no child is left behind, where no child is forgotten, and all God's children have the opportunity to fulfill the highest of which they are inherently capable of. That is a challenge, and we intend to meet it. After this speech, the House constituted a high-powered committee to look into the problems of education. But then COVID came, and nothing has been heard from it. But then COVID came, but the educational sector is still descending into the rut, and the House has not deemed fit to go into that matter again. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that recommendations stemming from this session, as will be forwarded to the House of Assembly and the National Assembly, would actually ignite some set of raw zeal in our legislators to do well. I welcome you all to the second session of the Policy Roundtable. I wish all of us a fruitful, intentional, and very deliberate conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I don't know to call it a ritual, but it's just something that has to be done. The Policy Roundtable we have a documentary to which it's a vox pop that was conducted, and it kind of shows the problems of Nigeria and when it's fixed by the voices of the persons on the streets, not people in some exalted table, but people that know where the pain lies. So we're going to be playing a few minutes vox pop of the policy conducted by the Policy Roundtable. Thank you.
In Nigeria, everybody has an idea on the way the country should be run.
Number one problem of this country is leadership.
In the minds of these individuals, those ideas which are stoically grounded in the depths of their subconscious are the only pathway to the liberation of the country.
One of the problems we get for this country, one are tribalism. Without that tribalism, this country could move forward. And the only way where this country can move forward, that when we remove that tribalism and religious sentiment.
These divergent opinions are sometimes brewed from the ingestion of negative clickbait articles, while some are found on a more accurate, well-researched facts and data.
Everywhere they will say there's this money from there and there. I will not see the money.
You know, in other countries, they pay school fees for. They even pay people for like 18 years old and above. They pay them whether they are working or not. They are sure of salary from their government.
What is supposed to be high is 17 naira per liter because we are the one producing it.
We might not want to ask as a people that as a country, what then is a real challenge facing us?
That time we said, and the rest. I will tell you what to do, and that is that foundation they lay down, it is what we are following. up to today, never changed.
What is that albatross that has continually befallen us in the 60 years of our resistance?
They create law, but they don't implement it. So many people go into crime, knowing fully that at the end of the day, I will still be free, that there will be no law to take its course on.
How do we harmonize these differences in the opinions of individuals to formulate good policies that will aid in delivering good quality of life for all Nigerians?
Nobody wants to take the bull by the horn. Nobody is ready to take the bull by the horn. Of a truth, when you look from north to south, east to west, there are similar things that are happening. But when it is from my region, it is not a problem. When it is from another region, it's a problem. Until Nigeria comes to see Nigeria as one, not regional, but as one country. Nigeria cannot
The Policy Roundtable.
Thank you very much. I hope that made sense to us. Before we move any further, we have a presentation. It's a spoken word by an artist that goes by the name Zone God. So you can come in.
Very good day to everybody. This is a piece called Paripa Ye. Basically, it's a pun on the word Ye Paripa from a very popular song by Femi Kuti. So this is a pun on it. It's a crazy demonstration by a democratic nation. It's a problem mathematicians can't pretend to comprehend. The economy is on the verge, we're virtually falling off the edge. So the youth need supplements when they are on a razor's edge. We lack all the confidence while the leaders do the money dance. Now everyone is in turbulence. This is why we shout, Ye Paripa, or Paripa Ye Ye. Cause the poor get poorer, like Karika Papaya. That is it, Karika Papaya. Paripa Ye Ye, Ye Paripa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that beautiful piece. To take the citation of our speaker today is no other person than the chairman, Young Lawyers Forum Abuja branch, Mr. Olanipeku Adikunisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I count it a great privilege to be given this opportunity. Special thanks to the team, Policy Roundtable. I'm grateful. So quickly, I'll be running through the profile of our distinguished guest speaker. Dr. Saliu Girai Bakari is Director of the Research and Development Centers of Excellence Department, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Nigeria, and has worked as a lecturer, researcher, and senior administrator in education. He obtained his Bachelor of Arts in Education from the University of Maiduguri in 1992, his Master's in Sociology from the University of Jos 1997, MA in International Education, specializing in gender and education in 1998, and PhD in gender education from the University of Sussex, UK in 2004. He rose to the rank of Chief Lecturer in Education at the Federal College of Education, ULA, and served as Assistant Director with the Universal Basic Education Commission, Abuja. He was appointed the Executive Chairman, Adamawa State Universal Basic Education Board, 2008 to 2012. Commissioner for Local Government Affairs and Commissioner for Higher Education in Adamawa State, 2012 to 2014. He is a recipient of several awards, including the British Chevening Scholarship Award in 1997, the Commonwealth Scholarship Award in 2001, and NYSC State Merit Award for Outstanding Service in Akwa Ibom State in 1993. His research has focused on issues of gender, sexual abuse, identity, educational access, and social stratification with particular reference to Nigeria. He has also published over 25 articles in learned journals, both locally and internationally. Dr. Bakari is a member of several learned societies, including Comparative and International Education Society, British Association for International and Comparative Education, and member the Institute of Leadership and Management, ILM UK. He attended various professional development courses across the world, especially on diversity, leadership, innovation, management of change, anti-corruption, and entrepreneurship. He has also traveled to over 30 countries, including the UK, Germany, United States of America, Mexico, South Africa, Qatar, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, China, France, Brazil, Greece, Israel, Netherlands, and so on. In recognition of his outstanding achievements, especially the frontiers of knowledge, the Lamido of Adamawa conferred on him the traditional chieftaincy title of Wakili Makarata Adamawa in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested, please join me as I go for his presentation, Dr. Saliu Girai Bakari.
Whether you have the chair of the patient, let me say the organizers of this all important policy roundtable, distinguished members of this roundtable, my dear senior colleagues. I should start by extending my appreciation to organizers of this roundtable for this initiative itself. Actually, when I was contacted to come and be a, let me say, participant in this event, I was taken aback that there are very serious people that really think for this country outside of government. And I quickly went through what you've been doing, and I would like to align myself with your initiative. Thank you too for extending this invitation to me. I don't think I really deserve to come and stand before you and speak, but I learned as a teacher that you always have something to say. Or even if you have nothing to say, someone has something to learn from you for not saying anything. At least when they are invited, they will learn not to know how not to say anything. We also have to appreciate the fact that youth are agents, beneficiaries, as well as victims of change. If you talk about the youth, that's the future. And the future is now. The future is not tomorrow. Anybody who waits for future as tomorrow, that person is actually has already planned to fail. So the future is now, and the future of this country is the youth. Unfortunately, my boss used to say that always look straight into the eyes of the youth today. You see that there is a serious problem. Their eyes are either reddish or yellowish, you know, or somehow, if you see them, you know they are in real dilemma of what to do. Frustration, if you like. I don't want to use the word frustration because when people are frustrated, they get depressed and they never get out of it. So, but really, the youth are disappointed by leadership. Someone said here that the key problem is leadership. Well, maybe another day we'll talk about leadership. Today we talk about education. Let's look at education. For me, education is everything. For me, education is critical for sustainable human and national development. What distinguishes Mr. A from Mr. B or Mrs. A from Miss B is the kind of education, the overall, the kind of education that person receives and what he or she makes out of it. That's the distinguishing feature. Someone is talking about tribalism here. In reality, the key issue is if we really want to focus and make progress, then we have to give education the top priority, more than any other thing. We talk about education as a right and other things, but for me, the fundamental basis that will help you to understand your right and also demand for the rights for other rights that are actually yours is education. The fundamental thing that makes you to understand your limits and your frontiers and whatever that you can do and cannot do is education. But later we'll see whether we receive education or not. So for me, education provides skills, personnel, and credible credentials and contributes to innovation and improves productivity of nations. In other words, no nation can rise above the quality of its education. Therefore, we have to see education as a right and also education as an investment. Education as a right because everybody uses education either to advance his cause or her cause or advance the cause of a nation or to struggle for his rights or her rights. And also education as an investment because it's the main force of production, human capital. Whatever you have, we keep saying Nigeria is a potential or is a potentially wealthy country. We always we remain at that level of potentiality. We are unable to harness our resources, largely because we are unable to provide the kind of education that can help us to harness our resources. So we continue to say, you have oil. I've always argued with my colleagues, especially those who come from other parts of this country where there is oil. And I always say that left to me, this oil should belong to the states, 100%. Federal government should have no business with it, but you pay tax. But everybody, the mistake we are making is that the human capital in us, the human resources that we have, is far better and far stronger and richer than talk about oil or gold or whatever. And that's why countries like Singapore, Malaysia, China, Indonesia, even those countries that have oil, they don't talk about oil. If you're talking about countries that are rich today, you don't talk about oil, you don't talk about Saudi Arabia or whatever. You talk about countries that have invested in human capital. If you invest in human capital, the money, Singapore is just one city-state, but the money they get as a result of commercialization of human resource is much higher than so many countries. Not only that, if we look at Stanford University alone in the United States, the innovation, some of the things that, the products, their inventions, is equivalent to the 10th largest economy in the world. One university. That's Stanford. If you pull their intervention together, it's equivalent to 10th largest economy in the world. Just one university. And that's a product of what? We are here talking about Google, www, HP, WhatsApp. All these are products of university graduates and students who are using a kind of projects. And today they are billionaires and they are investing heavily back to their universities. If you look at Harvard University, the endowment fund of Harvard University alone is much more than Nigeria's total Nigeria's budget. Just one university. And we keep saying we are rich, we have oil, we are fighting because of oil, and so on and so forth. Actually, oil, yes, it's good, but the way it is, it's like it's a curse. So, the issue is we have to invest. The rate of return in education, those who care to check, is much higher than investment in any other area of your investment in the world. If you invest in education, you have both the private rates of return and you have the public rates of return. The private rates of return refers to you as the person who went through the school. You know where to step, you know where not to step. You know what to say, you know what not to say. You are able to read a label and know that this is a poison, not paracetamol. So you cannot take it. You are able to know what it is. You are able to protect yourself. You are able to be gainfully employed. You are able to. Then you also have the public rates of return. You know, the higher education, the higher, if people are educated, they spend less on health. Because people take care of their public health, you know. If you have an educated society, there is more likely that you have peace and you resolve crisis amicably. Any society where you talk about violence, whatever the name, whether it's sexual violence, gender-based violence, what do you call it, farmer harder crisis, these are actually related to lack of proper education. I gave an example just yesterday. I was speaking with the NTA that, look, if you go to Brazil, Brazil has over 200 million heads of cattle. 200 million cattle. And they are farmers. But yet you don't hear about farmer harder clash. You don't hear about states promulgating laws to say that you cannot have, because, you know, 200 million. Yeah, because they've provided adequate education. The cows are there doing very well on a very small piece of land. You know, they don't have to move about from Yola to Makodi to Ibadan. And yet, the milk the cows produce there is about 50 liters a day, compared with our own maximum of 2 liters a day. There you eat without, in fact, in a restaurant you have to ask for the treatment because they don't need it. And this is all product of education. But the issue is, are we really providing the education that is required to move our nation forward, to make us really be rich? You don't have any business being poor if we're educated. But there's a distinction for me. I always say there's a distinction between schooling and education. And in most cases, we are schooled. We are not educated. And schooling is nothing more than indoctrination. You go to school, if you're in the primary, secondary school, you wear your school uniform, you go to school, you sing the national anthem without knowing the meaning, you say the national pledge without actually internalizing it. Up to now, people are not, even about citizenship, we ask ourselves whether we are citizens or we are indigents, whether, well, if you ask your country, it's Nigeria, but citizenship is about internalizing Nigeria. It's about fighting for Nigeria. It's about giving your chest out for Nigeria. It's about taking a bullet for Nigeria. But how many of us are ready to do that? Many say, we are first. Maybe I'm from Gire, I'm first from Gire before Adamawa. Then from Adamawa before I'm a Nigerian. Maybe I'm Fulani before I'm this. And at the end of the day, the multiplicity of identities that you have that really do not even help you at all is what you hang on to, simply because you actually didn't receive any education. You went to school, yes. You are schooled, and in the schools they keep telling you that one side is actually dominating the other side. And when you go to the other side, you find that the other side is actually suffering. You go back to your side, you find that the poor in Akwa Ibom is the same person, is same as the poor man or woman in Borno or Sokoto. And the rich are the same. Let's not go into that. But let's just think about it. So, education, we have to look at education as an outcome. and as well as education as certification. Again, that's why I was talking about schooling. Many of us went to school, but we are not educated. I'm just giving a kind of an overview. I hope we'll have time to distill those issues I'm raising. And before I forget, I told my senior over here that I'm not coming to speak, I'm coming to share. I don't know much. I would hope to hear from you so that I learn much more. I'm always willing to learn, I'm a student. So, the title of the discussion, or the focus of the discussion is on understanding global learning crisis within the Nigerian context, issues and solutions. Talking about global learning crisis, it's about, if you go into literature, global learning crisis is about three things, or three interrelated things. One is lack of access to education or to schooling. Two is about what goes on in the education system itself, in the schools itself. In other words, it's about lack of quality. Thirdly, is about dropping out. And of course, dropping out is a result of frustration of schools. It's a result of lack of quality. So, the main issue is this. We still have hundreds of millions of people across the world who do not have access to education. And 2/3 of those in schools are not actually learning what they're supposed to learn. So one thing is about access. Statistics shows that about 612 million children and youths do not have access to education. Of course, in Nigeria, you did say I was in UBEC. Since 1999, there has been this statistics about 9.7 million or 10 million children out of school. And they keep saying it's still 10 million children out of school. Up to now, up to tomorrow. I keep wondering whether this 10 million is, you always have 10 million children out of school. And the dropout rate is really terrible. Out of these 10 million, 2/3 are children, are girls and young and women. I always contest these statistics. You have much more than 10 million children out of school in Nigeria. And when I was chairman of SUBEB, I tested that statistics. I asked the director of PRS that I want statistics of those who are in school in Adamawa State, and statistics of those who are out of school, and those who have dropped out. And they gave me this data, I kept it. After 1 week, I said, I want the statistics, same. They gave me another data. Third time I asked, after a week, and all the three sets of data were different. And it was coming from the same person, same organization. Later I called and said, look, the data you gave me, you gave me three sets of data that are completely different at variance. And he said, yes, this data we give for UNICEF is different from the one we give you, different from the one we give Adamawa State government. Yeah, it's not funny. Because if you don't have data, you cannot even take a decision.
Yes, sir.
You can't even take a decision. Yes, sir. What I did was I had to commission a study in Adamawa State to tell me the state of my schools. That was when I started. First 6 months, I wanted to know the state of my schools. I wanted to know who was in school and who wasn't in school and why. And the result then showed me I needed about 69 billion naira to make the existing schools meet the average requirement of schools. I'm just giving you an example. So most of these statistics that they give you, they are much more than you see, really. If they are looking for aid, they give you a different data. If they want to show that they have made progress, you know, they are reporting to UNESCO, they give you a different set of data. If a politician is looking for it, he wants to organize his manifesto, they give him or her different data. So statistics in this country is somewhere that it's not what I intend to talk about. But at times when you talk, there's confluence between this and that. So this is it. So we have much more than 10 million children out of school. Yet we are not ready to educate them. Because I keep saying, if a governor will still go to commission a block of 6 classrooms, he has a long way to go. Just for doing his job. He will spend almost the same amount of money to commission that 2 blocks of classrooms, which he could have used again to build another. So, the crises are much more than you think. According to UNESCO, global learning crisis is costing us $129 billion annually. That is, you are paying for teachers who are really not teaching. You are wasting, there's opportunity cost. You go to school, you could have used your time to do something else. At the end of the day, you have not done anything and you have not learned anything. And then you get frustrated. And then you become a reference point for others. Because parents will say, why should I take my child to school when I've seen many that went to school and came back doing nothing? And then to me that makes sense. And that's why some parents would prefer, even nowadays, in this country, some would prefer to take their children at home, give them lesson, private lesson, and ask them to write private GCE. Because learning isn't taking place. I visited a school where there were 71 graduate teachers. And all the teachers had their own children in private schools. All. I'm not talking, all teachers there that had children, their children were in private schools, yet they were in a government school teaching. Then that shows that they do not have faith in what. The crisis is much more than you think. I presented a paper sometime in 1998 in Oxford University. And one prof, I still remember, Professor Keith asked me, what is the quality of the teachers you produce? Because I was in the College of Education. And I said that I would not want those student teachers to teach my children. That was my response. And that was 1998. The situation has been deteriorated now. It is stated that 1 in 4 young people in poor countries are unable to read a single sentence. And I will not be surprised. If you remember, there was a study in Kwara 2 years ago about teachers giving them assessment of class 4. And majority of them could not pass. Rufai did something similar in Kaduna. I wanted to do that in Adamawa State, but I didn't. I refused to do it. Because if I did it, I was going to create more crisis. Because the parents will now lose confidence in education. Because if I did it, I had to publish the result. And if I published the result, it was going to be an additional problem. But I've seen it. I've seen it. A teacher teaching minutes and wanted children to add 65 minutes plus 30 minutes. Yes. And the children, the pupils, that was in one primary school, the pupils were confused because they knew that once you have up to 60 minutes in 1 hour. Maybe you didn't understand what I mean. This crisis is threatening, in fact, some call it skills crisis. Skills. which is threatening the prospects of current generations and those to come. Today's world, you cannot succeed without having some requisite skill sets. We all know, in today's world, even ability to read and write is just one, but it isn't enough. Yet, we now have not only secondary school leavers, but even graduates who can really read or write. I've seen someone who had a degree, was employed, he or she could not write just one paragraph of acceptance letter. Just to say that I write to accept this offer. And I don't blame that person. It's the process and the system that produces that person and certifies that person that is the problem. Statistics have shown that 2/3 of children that are actually in school are not learning in developing, especially developing countries. They are in school. They always go to school, but they are not learning. So the essence, what is happening now is that all the investment, the money you are spending, if you look at your budget, most of this budget you see in education is that goes for recurrent expenditures, for salaries. So you have children, you've taken them away from their parents, they go to classroom or to school, spend hours, hungry, go home, tired, completely useless, hopeless, for a stretch of 9 years or so, but actually they are not really learning anything. And if you look at the schools, take time to go to government primary schools or secondary schools here in Abuja. Look at the schools. You know the learning cannot take place in those schools. You need to be told. And I took particular note. These children know that learning is not taking place. I don't think they don't know. They do. In 2003-04, when I was in the UK, my son was going to a school in the UK. And I told him that I've completed my studies, we are going back to Nigeria. The first question he asked me, he was 6 years old or less. Dad, which school are you taking me to? And that was, to me, it was a turning point for me. I took it seriously. Which school are you taking me to? I said, we are going to Gire 1 primary school. He said, the school, that's the school I attended. He said, is that not the school that he mentioned some of his cousins attend in the village? He said, yes. He said, no, I better not go to school. Less than 6 years old, he was able to understand that he should go to there's already class struggles, some, and I reflected, and I said that if by any chance I got the opportunity to contribute to development of education, I would focus seriously on the education of the poor. And that really changed my mind. Yes. And I got the opportunity. I'm not sure if I did my best, but I tried. Because I know within 4 years we were able to build more than 4,000 classrooms. We were able to build 370 new primary schools and so on and so forth. We did a lot. But I was in a hurry. And I was also trying to make sure that we had schools in Adamawa State then that could compete favorably with any private school. That was the target. Because it doesn't make sense to take children to school not to waste their time. The resources are not there. The teachers are ill-prepared. The classroom is not safe. No even toilets. No place of water. And so on and so forth. And that's the state of our schools. So, in other words, if you're talking about learning crisis, it's about we do not have access to school, and at all levels. What is the percentage of secondary school completers actually have access to university education in this country? Less than 10%. Less than 10%. Even those who pass the JAM and WAEC, there's still no place for them. There is what you call carrying capacity in universities. So, medicine in ABU's area as of today, you cannot admit more than 120. That is the carrying capacity. ABU's area receives applications of not less than 8,000 qualified candidates for medicine every year. So out of 8,000, you admit 120. We need to understand the crisis. It's there. I think University of Lagos is also the same. I think they have up to 120 or 150. They can't. No university in Nigeria admits more than 150 or at most 170 students for medicine. And no university receives less than 8,000, 10,000 applications of qualified candidates. And that's why you cannot do away with corruption. That's why you have to know who. Even if your JAM score is 350, you may not get admission to study medicine. Because there are so many 300s that know people. I hope you understand. Same thing with law. Because you have your mute court, you have this, you have that, the MBA, you cannot have more than this. So law is the same thing. Same thing with accountancy. All those professional, so-called areas, compared with the applicant. Qualified, forget about those who are not qualified. Forget about those who read geography and history and Hausa, and they don't understand that these courses, these subjects will not give them medicine and they apply for medicine. We still have some of them. Again, it's not their fault. It's still the fault of the system that has not even guided them properly. We are wasting resources. We are wasting human beings. And at the end of the day, it's frustrating. When some people take up arms, we have to blame them, we have to condemn them. But if we are in a small room, we have to say that, look, it may not be their fault after all. So, you have high dropout rates. Because if I go to school, I don't learn anything, I end up getting, and the system doesn't even support me. I drop out. And you have, I keep talking about this quality. So, what I'm trying to say here is that being in school is not even the same thing as learning. I'm not sure if I'm communicating. Now, why are we in this state? Yet, we are in this state largely because of, I don't want to say policy, but some say, many argue that Nigeria has one of the best policies when it comes to policy. The problem is implementation. And I said, no, wait. Any policy that is not going to be implemented is a bad policy. Yes, sir. Don't tell us, don't allow anybody to lie to you that you have the best policies, but the problem is implementation. Because a policy has to look at the environment. A policy has to look at the situation. A policy has to look at resources. It has to even look at the people, their attitudes, and so on and so forth. So if you design a policy, and then the policy, look, in this country, when they are doing this policy, they know. Because I want you to read Stephen Gold. He's an expert in policy. And one of his write-ups, he says, policies are valued, and they are not just, when you see a policy is being made, there are a lot of considerations in making that policy. And those considerations are political in nature. And that is why they keep bringing in some words. Shall, no, may, no, will, can. So that at the end of the day, they water down a policy that is not even justiciable.
Yes, yes.
You know, it's just nothing more than what is written on it. In fact, Stephen Ball says that they make policy in a way that is interpreted in different ways, to the extent that even the interpretation is subjected to another interpretation. If you look at all these laws, go to event laws, look at them very well. Look at, they will tell you that, well, education is a right, but you cannot enforce it. You cannot go to court today and take a governor or chairman of a local government to court for not providing education, so even though it's a right. Look at the policy very well. So until we make policies that are proper, that really targets providing quality education that emancipates. In today's world, especially in Nigeria, most people are not after quality education. That's what they say, let my people go. I have little time, go. The problem is you gave me a very big topic. Okay, thank you. Our 10 minutes is, you are gracious, I think. You have what we call, what Doe coined in 1976, the diploma disease syndrome. Everybody wants to acquire a certificate, irrespective of what that certificate provides. And that is the situation in Nigeria today. Everybody wants a certificate. Everybody wants, whether it's a diploma or a degree or whatever, let my people go. I just want to have a certificate. And because they see that certificate as the goal, they have reduced goal of education from learning to providing certificates. I hope you understand.
Yes, sir.
All they do is just get the certificate. And that's what's happening today. People just want to get the certificate. And then, when they get the certificate, that in itself leads to low quality education. When I was teaching, many will come and say, you know what they say nowadays? These are our children. If they don't pass, other people in other parts of the country, they're giving them the certificate. That's happening today in this country. I used to be a bit strict. By the time I taught, and about 60% didn't pass, and I didn't bother. And then the head of the institution wanted to know why. And I explained why. I said, majority of those that you gave admission are not teachable. I provided evidence that I never missed one class, even when it was raining, 7 a.m. I was in the class. So, and I taught. I provided evidence that I taught. And I provided evidence that I examined. And they failed. And I'm not lying to the system. I could have allowed everyone to pass. But I said, let's go back to the qualifications of those we admitted. And truly, 60% of them that failed, majority of them didn't have the qualification to even go into the system in the first place. Yes, that is one problem. Another problem is if you are teaching individualized, personalized teaching, you don't need more than 20, 25 in a classroom. But I was teaching 400. Truly, yes. There was a time after we went to the academic board and the result, we went through, normally it's 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Went through the results, examination board approved, and when it came to any other matter, I raised my hand. I said, I have an issue to raise. Says, I want to inform this board that I did not mark my scripts. I only allocated marks. So the result we have just approved may not be authentic. I said it. And everybody was looking at me. I said, what? You've given me only 2 weeks to mark scripts. I taught about 3 courses, each having about 400 students. How could I have marked 1,200 scripts? Plus their assessments. Everything. And then you expect me to be fair in that assessment procedure. So I'm just telling you, what I did was allocated marks. And I even gave them an example. There was one script I was marking. Before I realized it, I marked more than, the person got more than 60 out of 60. So I have to remark. I used to be a bit radical. Yeah. And then another colleague said, truly, I also only allocated marks. Another person said so. Yes. So it was, they were waiting for, yeah, and we said, look, we have to address this problem. And I kept saying it. So these are some of the issues that we are facing. So the diploma disease leads to one fundamental crisis, and that is the issue of educated unemployment. We now have so many people, so many graduates holding their certificates, so many people either unemployed or underemployed. I hope you know the distinction between unemployment and underemployment. Yes. Someone having a degree but getting a job for secondary school, that person is underemployed. Someone having a degree but is doing a security job at the gate. So many of them, those security men that you see, if you ask them, they have diplomas, they have HNDs. So many of them, but they are not employable, largely because of the kind of education they receive. There is no skill. The certificate they receive is only to make them get government employment, and there is no government employment. I'm abridging some of the things that I really want to say. But a lot of things happen. Even the issue of examination malpractice. Today, students become more religious when it's time for exam.
Yes.
They are always praying. They kneel down, they roll the eye. And I ask myself, I never prayed to pass exam. You don't have to. You pray for something else, not to pass exam. But because learning is not taking place, we are even gambling. We even assume that passing exam is an issue of gambling. So you pray to God so that you are lucky. They ask you questions you will answer, or let the examiner be like me and award marks. That is the issue. And it's very serious. So today you have so many graduates that cannot defend their certificates. And because they did not receive the requisite skills, the curriculum that is taking place in our universities, in secondary schools, in polytechnics, and colleges of education. Polytechnics are supposed to be entrepreneurship centers. But someone, a graduate of polytechnics, will spend 10 years without a job and cannot even be self-employed. Ask yourself, what is the worth of that certificate? That certificate is as good as just another favor. You have a graduate. After spending 4 years to have a degree, at best, you'll be in a barbing salon. There's someone, one of my good barbers, one day I engaged him, and he told me he was a graduate. He was looking for a job. He couldn't get a job, so he became an apprentice and he's doing a good job. But why should I go to a degree to the university, spend 4 years, waste my time, those of my parents, my girlfriends, my boyfriends, whatever, only for me to come and do another thing called that is entirely nothing, So that's why I started by telling you, if you go to Stanford University, these are Cambridge. Everywhere you go, the universities are targeted. In fact, they are start-up centers. You don't, in the United States of America, majority after graduation work for government for maximum of 5 years. They are on their own because they are quick to make money. The system has made them prepared for useful living, for the future, not even for now, but even for the future. Ours is the reverse is the case. We are still talking about chalk and talk. And even the chalk and talk, we can't talk well and we can't really talk well. So, and that is what is happening to us now. Leads to frustration. You are a graduate. Later you don't know what to do. Maybe I'll go and do a postgraduate diploma. Later you come back, you want to do a master's degree. You are not even sure. You are just wasting more and more money, giving the lecturers tuition fees and so on. You are just wasting more, keeping some people employed. At the end of the day, you have the certificates. You don't know what to do with the certificates. I always tell my children, I don't want any of them to work for government. They should think about themselves. I want them to be self-employers. I want them to be employers of labor. So think about what you want to do. If the system can't provide you with that, then it's the responsibility of advocates to really, until we change the curriculum as it is, we are in big trouble. We are just the system is making us feel big, and we're just fools. We can't do anything. We are unemployed. You are 30 years old, you are still in your father's house, still waiting in the room, waiting for a mother to give you food. And you get frustrated if the soup is not good. I keep recommending that we have to introduce the teaching of thinking. We don't teach thinking. We are like robots. We don't teach thinking. You are giving a wrong impression. You go there, you have a law, you become a lawyer, you do the barrister, or I don't know the distinction anyway, and then you assume no. People say you think outside the box. I say remain in the box, but think. Yes. Because if everybody leaves the box will be empty. Go back to the box and think. Yes, you have to learn skills, basic life skills, very, very important. You have to start thinking differently. You have to start challenging the status quo. You have to start challenging taking for granted things. That things are just normal, will be normal, you go and have a degree and no. Majority today are not employed because the system has cheated them. The system has not provided them with the requisite training for them to be employed, to be gainfully employed. You make a lot of money by not getting government employment. And if you know what government employment is, you don't even like it. I always say that it's only in government that they assume. The law says you are assumed to be what? Innocent until proven. In civil service, you are assumed a criminal from day one. That's why the moment they give you a job, they will say, declare your assets. Tell us what you have. What is the source of your income? What is this? What is that? From day one, and after every 4 years, you have to do that. So why do you have to box yourself to why you will not be? So I believe the curriculum in this country is irrelevant. Countries have moved on. we are still where we are. You know, and even the processes in the system, the processes, not only the curriculum, even the processes. If you go to a developed country, you know, one thing I tried to learn was to call my lecturers with their first names. Because in this country, if your name is Professor Adewanju and I call you Adewanju, that means I'll never graduate. So, you know, yeah. But, you know, in the UK, I learned to call you David, Fiona. If I call you, no, nothing. The issue is we have to break down the boundaries so that you are able to understand me. I'm also able to communicate.
Yes.
But when there is this power asymmetry, you are powerful and powerless because you are a lecturer and a student. You are going to have a problem. That's why you have all these issues of sexual violence in schools. Yes. Largely it's about power asymmetry. I'm powerful, you are powerless. So either bring yourself or I deal with you. We have to change.
Yes, sir.
Then the teacher factor, the training of teachers in this country. Even the teachers don't even know. We have some of the good ones, but the system, I mean, generally, if you want to reform the curriculum, you also have to reform the teacher to fit in with the new curriculum. With the issue of thinking, allow me to challenge you. You know, I told somebody my doctoral thesis, in my doctoral thesis, I challenged my supervisor 47 times. 47 times. She never said no. So maybe if there are issues to discuss, we discuss with, I have 2 more minutes, go. So what, the best thing, let me tell you what I will do. I will say, I'm done. Actually, I wasn't given, I didn't know how long I was going to speak. So I thought it was going to be 1 hour. Then I would have spoken for 2 hours. But actually, I'm passionate about these issues. That's why, and because I've gone through a lot, and I've seen this frustration. In 2006, I was the special assistant to the ES of UBEC, and we went to Sokoto. And we saw children sitting on stones. There was no roof. And I quickly told him, I said, sir, Prof, I said, these children, by the time they grow, and they realize that you and I were in UBEC, they will stone us. These stones they are sitting on, they will use it to stone us. But that is the problem. The governments are not serious. And they see education, they are providing for education as if it's COVID palliative. That is a problem. That's a problem. I've seen it. As Commissioner for Local Government, I'll give you this. Sorry, I was Sube before I became Commissioner for Local Government. When I took over Sube, I realized that teachers were not promoted for 8 years. Yes. And then I carried out the promotion interview and came up and we needed 300 million naira to implement it. And the local government chairman said they didn't have the money to give us. No, it's too much. And then they called me, the governor was there and the Algon leadership was there. And the governor asked me, Dr. Bakari, say, yes, sir, Your Excellency. So what is the way out? I said, there is a way out, sir. He said, please tell us. He said, 1, we should call the press. Let this chairman address the state that they cannot pay for the education they cannot pay for this promotion. Number 2, you as the governor of the state will announce the closure of all the schools so that we shouldn't have any schools. Or thirdly, you sack me as web chairman. And that's what I said. He looked at me, looked at the Algon chairman, called the commissioner for local government and said, go and pay. And I see it.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. That was very educative, entertaining for me too. Anyways, it was an amazing session, and the sad joke of how a professor refused to come out from an airplane made by a student that he taught, to the fact that he shared sure that this plane will not take off, remaining to crash. It's one that we laugh at sometimes, but it's disheartening to think that you give what you know is apparently, what I would say, near worthless. But then again, I'm sure that there is a solution to all of this. Round of applause to this amazing session. Thank you very much. While we were having the session, one of our special guests walked in, the person of Mr. Martins Obono, the founder of TAP Initiative. And now we have these three persons, Mr. Gideon Olariwaju, Mr. Martins Obono, and Mr. Kingsley Sintim. Will be giving you 2 minutes to speak directly to the issue at hand, which is, yes, you're a special guest, you're going to have to do that. And it's just 2 minutes, starting off with Mr. Gideon Olariwaju, sir. He's the founder of Area I.
Thank you. Okay. Shall I use the podium? Okay. Good evening, everyone. 2 minutes is quite a very short time to react to what Dr. Salisu has said. So, first I want to say a very big thank you for coming. I'm also a traveling scholar, did my master's at Sussex, so it's really great to be learning from you here. He has said so many things, but I will want us to do 2 things. The first one will be to understand the problem, and also talk about the solutions from a youth perspective. So let's start with the problem. Trying to analyze the problem of the global learning crisis from the lens of the UNICEF model of quality education. Sorry, I'm a practitioner from both theory, practice, and policy, so permit me if we are able to dissect that. I will not do 2 minutes, but you permit me, I won't take time. 5 things within the Nigerian educational system: the concept of learners, the learning environment, the content, the process, and the learning outcomes. I used to say this a lot, and I think it's the very first basic thing we need to understand. You cannot solve a problem you don't understand. So let's start from the learners, the age of the learners, the requirement of our learners. What are they? We need to be able to solve them. How is the learning environment? According to UNESCO, there's a need for something called the safe schools. Schools that are adequately equipped with toilets, with laboratories, with libraries, with classrooms that have access to maybe books. Many of that, we don't have them. Let's go to the content aspect. Now, he said something about the curriculum. Over time, they've said the essence of education has transcended beyond acquisition of literacy and numeracy skills. We have young people now who are designing concept of machine learning, robotics, artificial intelligence. We don't have all of that. How do we incorporate that? Now we go to the process. I was talking about teachers, teaching. There's something in Nigeria that I know people who are familiar with education will understand, and it's called the banking system of education. Teachers come to the classroom and they say, today we are teaching pollution. What is pollution? And they go on and on. There needs to be a system whereby we recognize learners as co-constructors of knowledge. They come into the classroom and you construct knowledge with them. Then the last one will be learning outcome. No nation can prioritize education if there is no an harmonized understanding of our educational objective. Why are we educating our kids? What is the motive? Is it for the improvement of societal and economic transformation? If that is not defined, then we don't have a system. Now to the solutions. Sorry, I'm almost done. Now, the global learning crisis. In 2018, I was at the UN General Assembly when this was announced by the Education Commission, the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown. It was a privilege to be there, but it's so sardonic that 2 years after, the world is still suffering from the global learning crisis, particularly in Nigeria. So, having done things on the field myself, running an organization, and having studied education from master's even to currently on my PhD, I think I came up with a framework, and I used to talk about it a lot. Mass education through alternative means of holistic human capital development. Now, I'll break that down. The summary of all the things Dr. Salisu said can be categorized under access, retention, and quality learning outcomes. Those are the three things I will categorize it for. Now, to solve those three things, I would say we can categorize three different solutions. The first one would be innovation. The second thing will be collaboration, and the last one will be technology. Very simple and straightforward. Now let me take them one after the other. 2 minutes more, 2 minutes. Okay, the first one is innovation. Innovation. Now, to start with, education provision is not a constitutional obligation. It is rather an ethical and moral devotion, not only by government institutions or leaders, but everyone. 2 days ago, I was speaking on TVC, and the reporter asked me, who do you think is responsible for development of education? I said it's a collective responsibility. And that's the reason why that innovation part is not only the government that is innovating, we are all innovating. So how do we innovate? My colleagues from area understand, I do say something a lot, I call it global policy lending or global policy transfer. Nations like Singapore, Indonesia are doing, no, I'm going too far, Botswana, South Africa, Angola are adopting very interesting low-cost strategies to improve quality or provision of education. Now, under that innovation, I'll give 2 examples, then I'll go to collaboration and technology, and I will leave. The first one would be something I called alternative learning systems. And I think Nelson will understand this because quite a number of local organizations in Nigeria are trying to adopt alternative learning systems. It shouldn't be the responsibility, of course it is, but the state itself needs to understand the place of alternative learning systems. Now, there's something that is quite popular, it's called teaching at the right level methodology, TAL. I'm still under innovation, and I'm trying to connect that to how we can use that to solve access and quality. An NGO in India called Pratham is one of the world's largest NGO in education, designed how you can ensure children who are out of school and are not learning. You know, we're talking about the global learning crisis. Dr. Salisu spoke about children who are in school and cannot read and write. In Nigeria, let's talk about the statistics. TAL is a system that allows you to teach foundational skills, literacy and numeracy, under 3 to 4 months, based on not the age or the grade, but the learning capabilities of a learner. It has been used to educate 47 million children across the world. You can Google it, teaching at the right level methodology. This is a system that some countries in Africa has adopted. They are trying to pilot in Kano and Kaduna right now. Such policies are not for individual states. They are policies that can be adopted nationwide, countrywide, to ensure that easily we can ensure we solve the problem of the global learning crisis. Another one that I will talk about will be accelerated education mechanisms, which is different from alternative learning systems. An example of that would be speed schools adopted in Ethiopia and Liberia. Now I'm talking about systems that I think Nigeria as a nation can learn from. We are talking about policies. The speed school program allows you to educate out-of-school children in 10 months. They collapse the first 3 years of the mainstream education and they educate them in 10 months. Now, evidence shows that 97% of these children perform 98% better than their counterparts in the 4th year of primary education. It's now being adopted in Sierra Leone, in Ethiopia, in Liberia. Nigeria can do better. Now, the second one I spoke about is collaboration after innovation. And I'll give examples of that. There's a system called Teach for All. They have a system in Nigeria, they call them Teach for Nigeria. And they're in about 57 other countries. The country cannot do it alone. Individuals cannot do it alone. We have so many non-profit leaders here. We can't do it alone. There's a need for public-private partnerships. Identifying organizations who are doing well in terms of how they are addressing the teacher problem, the learner problem, the learning environment problem, and supporting them. There are a lot of innovation young people are doing even in response to COVID. I've designed 2 different innovations for COVID-19 and I'm still struggling to find support, despite their proven usefulness in terms of accessing education during this time. There needs to be partnership between not only the government and non-state actors like youth, but also other organizations and agencies outside of the nation. The very last one will be technology. Now, Dr. Salisu spoke about you can't solve a problem when you don't have data. Data is the new oil. We've had a number of statistics, 10.5. Sir, 2 months ago or last month they said it's 16 million. And we know it's more than that. Now, UNICEF has an interesting technology called rapid SMS. They use it in some system to take daily attendance of students. These are some of the technology that I believe that we can use, I'm almost ending, we can use to, you know, address and be able to account for the number of out-of-school children we have. Then beyond that, there are so many low-cost, zero-tech, high-tech technology that we can adopt. And I'll give two examples: edutainment and gamification. We are still talking in the context of global learning crisis when we say they are not learning. When there are other teaching and learning approaches that can be adopted, we are far from the ages of 1 or 2 age. It's not that anymore. It's not. Some people don't go to the classroom, to the board now, to do writing again. They sit around in a round table. Because I'm in Canada now, and I went to a school to talk about the SDGs. 14-year-old, 15-year-old, everybody has an iPad. I wanted to say, I know you guys don't have an iPad, and everybody brought out their iPad. It was disgraceful for me. So for me, 3 things: innovation, collaboration, and technology. I believe those are the pivotal things that can be used.
Thank you very much, sir. That's amazing. We should give you like 3 hours session just to learn this. It's beautiful. The next person that will be giving us, that will be speaking to the issue, is Mr. Martins Obono. Mr. Martins, please. 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. I really don't have much to say. Doctor, thank you so very much for all you've done for your state. I have been, if you're on the employment side of the divide in Nigeria, you will understand the majority of the things that employers of labor get to suffer when it comes to skill acquisition and when it comes to learning as well. So I'll give you an example. After my law school, I set up an organization, opened a law firm almost immediately, and decided to employ. And I put up a notice for call for application and all that. And I was asking myself, with the number of people that have applied, how am I going to start? What is going to be my criteria for employing people? What am I going to say? Most of the CVs were very fantastic, first class, this class, and all that, with a lot of people who have professional qualifications as well. So I was just confused. So I decided to do one thing, and that is to buttress the fact that we've got to place emphasis on critical thinking. Critical thinking. Yeah. Critical thinking. So I said to myself, my office is in Utaku, close to Ansarudin Mosque. I'm going to send out the address to anyone who wants to apply until I get the number of people that I wanted to recruit. And the recruitment process is going to be, if you call me to say, Oga, where you there, or please, where is your address, or how I'm here, that's going to be the first, that's the entire recruitment process. And the only people that who never made that call were people who studied abroad. One particular person called me 14 times. 14. She called me 14 times. And you do, I mean, everyone in my office, it's only just last January that the only person who, because I specifically saw her and I knew her performance and I decided, okay, come, help me, man. The rest abroad. And the moment they came, I was like, let me see your CV. So they dropped the CV and I'm like, you have a job. Can you resume next month? And they're like, what's this one say? Because the first thing is that you're coming into a new environment. I have new office culture. Whatever you learn, you're going to unlearn it. You're going to learn new things. And I need you to be on your feet, right? So basically, we have to place a lot of emphasis on critical thinking. People need to, I used to tell my siblings and their children, I'll say, see, everything you do, let these children be streetwise. If at the end of the day you're spending 2 million to train your children in school, in private schools, in a year 4 million and everything, if at the end of the day you drop dead today and your children can't stand on their feet, so what's the essence of this Ajevota education that we're giving? So at the end of the day, we've got to really place emphasis on that. Then I'm more of an activist, so I'll give you an activist approach to solutions to this thing. First of all, Doctor has said something about the Constitution. Now, Chapter 2 of the Constitution, we've got to make it justiciable. If we really need to get things right, socioeconomic rights, not negotiable. We've got an action. We have the constitutional review coming up. Senator Oviam Omoagege has started the process of amending the 1999 Constitution. What are you going to do about that? Because at the end of the day, this is our country. We are already getting to have children. Majority of us, if you've not had one. So what are you going to bequeath to your children? What are you going to bequeath to the next generation? What are you going to be known for? What are you going to be fighting for? What will they remember you for fighting in your life? Like by the time you leave here, what is it? See, what's his name? Chadwick just passed, and a lot of people who don't even know his story, who don't know his history, they just know him for Black Panther, and that's it, right? And that movie Black Panther kind of opened the eyes of black people to say we can do this. A lot of people have gotten into artificial intelligence and all that, robotics and all that, because of just Black Panther. So that's the level of education that we are also talking about, right? So if tomorrow, if you don't know what to do, please come to me. Honestly speaking, at the end of this meeting, please come to me. We are going to start, I'll give you a reply.
Thank you very much, sir. If I was a teacher, I'm not sure I'll look at anymore because nobody's listening to me. 2 minutes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Sally Sue, and my colleagues that spoke earlier on. What I want to speak to, he spoke a lot of things which we are doing in Nigeria. I'll speak from a practical approach, what we are doing. During this COVID-19 lockdown, we have a project called Glow List Clubs, where we empower young girls to learn in their communities. We have it across 7 states in Nigeria, and we're doing it for like four years going. And all of a sudden, there's a lockdown. We're not thinking, what ways can we impact on these young girls? I looked at different technological approaches. Most of the girls don't have smartphones, and it was a very serious learning challenge for us. What we then did was to use mass media as a form of communication. So we used radio. So we had a mentor go on radio, we asked the girls to tune into that radio station. We have an instructor teach, go through the curriculum, and these girls were able to learn. Why I'm saying this because we have the issues of adopting technologies that don't fit into our contexts.
Yeah.
So the question of, okay, I did a program sometime, I did a course, and I met this lady, online course with MIT, and we're classmates, and she said, let's collaborate because she knows about my project. So I brought my kids from the rural communities, and these kids in Canada. There was no comparison. So I'm looking at the world where we're going to consider the fact that we're a globally competitive society. So I did a project with Rockefeller Foundation years back. I was taking them on digital jobs. And I went to almost 36 states in the country, and I was shocked. I primarily went to NYC camps, just to encourage people, oh, you can learn, you can apply for jobs online. Rockefeller gave us almost $1 million grant to go and execute this project. You can learn online, you can't go to, you mustn't come to Abuja to work. And most people can't even feel the fun online. So we're dealing with the issues of, we're moving in a society where we have knowledge economy, but people are not really adapting to these changes. So I think one practical approach I would, like Doctor said and my colleague has said, promoting critical thinking and alternative education. Learning doesn't just stop at the classrooms, it goes beyond that. And one thing we are doing at Nigeria is to make sure that our young kids, our children in communities have access to these tools, i.e. through quality mentoring. Because most kids, after school hours, they just go back, face their business, communicate. So they don't really have a guided approach towards facing realities. So I recently traveled to China, and I was marveled. I went to China, I went to this center, they call it Maker Space. I saw a 12-year-old guy, he had about $2 million. And I looked at myself, what am I up to? And the guy did a project, the programming. And when I came back, I just talked on my live people. I said, I'm not doing what I'm doing, the thinking that I had then was outdated. Now incorporating makerspace into our solution. What's makerspace? Makerspace where you look at science-based learning for practical approaches, i.e. you do a project, you do a research, think about a solution that affects your community, and how can you make a practical approach to implement those changes. Those are what we're trying to do. So it might sound too, I don't want to come up with so many terminologies and whatnot, but I think the practical thing is for us to see how we as participants, what way we can support this ongoing system, and government in the policy sector, what way they can give in a holistic approach. And this is what they call the Matthew effect. The rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poorer. Education in Nigeria, most schools, you cannot compare private schools to public schools because there's clear disparities in terms of the outcomes, in terms of expectations. So I encourage that as nationwide or whatever it is, that we should look critically at this issue of critical thinking, for people to think and apply that. So this thing I learned ways back, they call it the bonus thinking cap. I read this book, and when I use it practically, like when I'm having a problem, I put on a hat. I say I put on the judgment hat, the black hat, and I think in that particular pattern. I put on the green hat, innovation. So we need to start teaching kids. So those are things that we at Nigerians are focusing on. I'm just talking about practical experiences and more that we could do. So I don't say much, but that's all I have to say. It's called extra classes. So in a nutshell, I do home tutoring. And most times when I go to my client's place or places, I get worried. The fact that most times I see all manner of ridiculous curriculums, British curriculum, Japanese curriculum, American curriculum. And I'm wondering, what are we doing as a children in those communities? They're just there. The system would test them the same way. They're not going to issue the exam to them. No, it's the same test they're going to go through. So how can we bridge this gap between the rural and the urban? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Azumwai, and I want to speak to the issue of, my question is about talking about graduates in Nigeria and compared to graduates coming from outside the country and the ability to actually create something from your education rather than waiting to get employed. There's a big question that says there are a number of Nigerian students, even from Nigerian universities, that have been able to come up with some ideas to do something to create jobs, but we would also meet the issue of funding. Now we talk about Harvard, we talk about all these schools abroad, and you'd also agree with me that most of these schools also have what they call grants that they give to students to start up. But that's not existent in Nigerian universities. So how do we bridge that gap in this conversation as we talk about education and making it more productive than what we have today?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joey Abrokwe. I am very passionate about policy and polity in Nigeria. And so, thankfully for everyone's sake here, you've served in the UBEC, and I want to know something about this system of education that's very worked. Prior to this period, there was a system of education that like 6334, if I'm right. But right now, we operate a system that's about 934. So, is it sustainable in this system of education? Because education is supposed to provide knowledge, it's supposed to provide and imbibe knowledge first of all, then provide skills like job skills, then also improve cultural values. First of all, we can't move into a knowledge economy because we don't have the knowledge. Secondly, we don't have job skills because we don't even have youths that are employable, like you said. There's lack of employability amongst the youth. And thirdly, we can't even talk about cultural values right now in Nigeria. Some weeks ago, our former minister was talking about Yahoo boys. We all know how it ended anyways. So in these three aspects, I believe that the current system of education has failed. So do we still maintain this universal basic education system, or we go back to the 6334 that encouraged vocational skills That was my question, sir.
Keep associable. I'm a human being. My question is this: our universities, what is the remedial technique to cure ourselves from the disease of bad lecturers? Because where, like Doctor actually portrayed, there is this powerful, powerless scenario that is there, and so you cannot know, you dare not know more than your lecturer, you dare not be more clever than your lecturer. So how are we going to rid ourselves of that? Because where your lecturer do not accept your independent thinking, there is no way he's going to allow that reflect in your scripts, and there is no way he's going to allow that reflect in real life. So students are boxed inside the mind of their lecturers, and you can't excel more than your lecturer. And when you graduate, it's just like that. We are all in a box, and we can't really think since it's their box. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay.
I have a question. So my question is about education financing. I hold a huge sentiment around the fact that Nigeria as a nation is not allotting budgetary allocation to education. I think that's a general consensus. But the problem that I'm finding in the system is that we are not clear enough about which of the tier of government, either local, state, or federal, is responsible for finding innovative financing for education. Based on your experience working with the UBEC, if I'm correct, SUBED, at the it's interesting. Who do you think should do that? My master's thesis was about diaspora bonds. I'm thinking there should be a system of diaspora bonds to finance education. Some people said no, but I know that there are a lot of financing. Who do you think should take the step? And do you think Nigeria as a state right now should take up the responsibility of fundraising for education from other means apart from the CRF? Thank you.
So we have one question from our guest joining us online. It was, what sort of policies can we adopt to make our educational system valuable, peculiar to Nigeria's climate? So did you get it? So what sort of policies can we adopt to make our educational system valuable, which is peculiar to Nigeria's climate?
Thank you once again for bringing me back to the podium. Very challenging questions. I can see that the critical thinking is taking place already. The issue of, starting with my colleague, thinking about unified curriculum. Actually, Nigeria has a unified curriculum. Yeah. The curricula, various curricula you are referring to, especially those that are operating in private schools or in private homes. Actually, those that are meant to help the children, in addition to the national curriculum, we have what we call national curriculum, which is applicable generally. All our books, that are published in Nigeria reflect the national curriculum. But, children of the elites have this idea of wanting to send their children probably abroad. And for them to do that, they want to prepare them with either British curriculum or the American curriculum, and so on and so forth. But we have a national curriculum. The question is whether it's still adequate. Some say it's overloaded. Because if you look at the UK curriculum that we teach, they focus largely on, especially for primary, on numeracy and literacy. But here, at the last count, I don't know now, there were about 16 subjects in primary school. So the issue is maybe we need to move away from subjects to identifying certain skill sets. Maybe that is the, and that's why we are talking about the need for curricular reform. We really need to reform the curriculum. Because if we are able to reform the curriculum, we can even de-emphasize examination. And, children, I always say my children are suffering, that they are over-preparing for exam. When I look at the young, small boys, which exam? In Finland, there is no exam until after 9 years. At all. No exam. And Finland has the best education system, I judge to be the best. So, when I was in Adamawa, I tried to stop this issue of even, what do you call it? Is it ranking, position, after position class, first place, second place, useless. Apart from useless, there's also corruption in it. My son once complained that he got, so is my daughter, that she got second position. And she said, Daddy, this is not true. I got first position, but they gave me second position. And I asked her why. I'm serious about this. That's long. She said that I wanted to see everything. And truly she was right. Because in all the subjects, she came first, except in one. Assuming you have 10 subjects, and you got first position in 9 out of 10, there's no way you could have taken second position. But she was given second position. Because it meant that for that person to get first position, the person must have got first position in all the subjects. Because this girl got 9 positions in one, first position in 9 subjects. In the 10th subject, she got second position. But overall, she was given second position. And she said, Daddy, wuru. Small children, again, they understand it.
Yes, sir.
So, at times, some of these teachers, the way we work with as a teacher, you think you know everything. The children are also able to decode you. So the issue of national curriculum, we have national curriculum approved by the NERDC, but we need to review it. You have so many subjects where you're teaching them as individual subjects at primary school level. It's a problem. And they hardly connect. That's the problem. The connection will not be there. But if you look at the British curriculum, the connection is there. You can teach sociology, you can teach social studies, for example, and numeracy. There's a way you do it, in a way that the next is, the issue of bridging gap between the rural and urban communities. I'm happy to know that, that's a legit. I'm happy to know that you are very much, actually my focus is on education of the vulnerable groups. I'm always looking into whoever that is disadvantaged, especially those who are socially disadvantaged by nature of their either status or where they live, and when I was at Sussex for my MA, I specialized on the education of traveler children in the UK. And it was terrible as well. Travelers are just like the nomads here, but they are like, it's another issue. So the issue is, how do we bridge? There's always this gap between rural and urban schools, especially here. But we have to have radical approach. You have to incentivize, for example, teachers in rural schools. For you even to keep the right teachers. Otherwise, they will always want to move out, and they can always move. They have ways of moving out. And I always say this, that we are misplacing priority in this country. Do you know that we give the rich free education and we ask the poor to pay? At first you say that, how can that be? Let me tell you how that happens. university education is free. We all went to universities in Nigeria without paying tuition. It's free. The little amount you pay, my son is studying medicine in Abu Zaria right now, and he pays 42,000 per annum as tuition, as fees. It's free. But the question is this: for my son to have access to medicine, he had to go to a private school, where I was paying 1.5 million per annum for him to get the quality education and pass JAM. His counterpart in a rural area does not have the same access. So his counterpart will remain without, in most cases, will remain without the requisite qualification to get access to free education at the university level. So you go to secondary school, that's the end of you. You are there. My son, whom I spent, that's 9 million, to finish secondary school, is now receiving free education by government at the university level. The other child who went to rural school and the resource school will not, it's unlikely to even pass WAEC. Talk less of passing JAM. They have not even seen computers. Talk less of training the CBT to do the JAM. So they keep failing. And the rich or the children of the elites keep receiving. If you go today to the universities, public universities, majority of the students come from elite background. They attended private schools. And that's how government is paying for the rich at the university. So there's misplacement of priority. Let government invest money in government primary schools and secondary schools. And ask parents to pay at the university. It's far better for you. ASU always tells you that they are fighting for the poor. They are not fighting for the poor. They are fighting for their pockets. Because they know this. I argued this case with many ASUs, with many VCs. I want to see the statistics. Let us look at it. Those who actually, and especially those who get better courses in universities, most of them went to private schools. And you have to be rich before you go to private school. How much do we pay here? Within Abuja? I have two small kids like Tom and Jerry. Yes, I'm paying an average of 1 million per child. Yes, in primary school. So you pay all this, and then you pay an average of 1 million for secondary school, and at the end of the day, they go to university and get free education. I hope you understand. So we have to look at it differently. How do we really prioritize? Are we really spending, when you are giving free education at the university level, who are you really giving this money to? Who are you helping? And at the expense of whom? You have to ask that question. Then the issue, when I was in Sube, in Adamawa State, I said, okay, let me pay additional allowance for teachers in rural areas. Let me even give them motorcycles. I did that, and let me train more. I brought people from the UK. For about 3 months, in fact 6 months, they were in Adamawa State training my rural teachers. I did that. And I took some of the head teachers from rural areas to UK and Singapore, and South Korea, to train them. You need to do that to incentivize them. Otherwise, we'll continue to have that problem. And I also try to have model schools in rural areas where we have computers with internet and whatever. It's very expensive, no doubt about it. It's very, very expensive. But you have to strike a balance. And because I am poor, and I came from a very poor background, and I appreciate being poor, I always thought about the poor, much more than the rich. So, we have to really look at this issue. Even the issue of the JAM itself. Because if you are, it's just like women. You train a woman from background, from home, to be shy, not to be seen, not to do this, and then the same woman, you want her to come for an interview, or you want her to be very bold. So we must also have different, not entry requirements, but entry points. And again, it's for us to really raise this issue, because those in those poor, rural schools, those in rural areas do not even have the voice. They don't even have the voice. They thank you for giving them nothing. You understand? I saw this. They appreciate more. You give them just 3 classrooms, they thank you forever. But there are no teachers. In some of these schools, I have seen it. And you go to a secondary school in a rural state, in a rural environment, with no one science teacher. Yet, they will write they will write physics, chemistry, biology. So there's a serious problem. And until we have practical approach to solving this problem, we'll continue to have this problem. And the rich will continue to be richer. The issue of funding for innovation. This is really, remember I said that the universities are supposed to be innovation hubs. And really, at TETFUND, what people may not know is that TETFUND gives special allocation for all universities to take care of entrepreneurship. We do every year. Every year. And yes, for entrepreneurship. Because we realize that our students get general education, but largely theory. And then, as I said, they come out with nothing. And some may have some brilliant ideas, but they cannot go far. I saw one proposal from University of Lagos, very excellent, and we funded it. We give hundreds of millions, really, yes, for innovation. Again, it's another issue for other people to go and find out what is happening with this money and how are we implementing it. You know? I hope you understand. Then, the 6334 system, we are still operating 6334 system for education, actually. It's not 934. And we took a lot of time when I was in UBEC to trying to explain to stakeholders that it's not 934. All we are saying is that you have 6 years of primary education and 3 years of junior secondary education, then 3 years of senior secondary education, and then 4 years of university degree or university education. Now, the reason people think this is first 6 and 3 constitute the basic education, but you must go to primary school. But what we are now saying is that, or what the system is saying is that there won't be any certification, so that you don't think you have completed. Many will complete primary school and stop there. Now what they are saying is that there is no certification at the end of primary education. You have to move to junior secondary school, have JSS, then you are given certificate. If you look at it nowadays, there is no primary school level certificate. That is the idea. We want you to transit automatically, 100% transition, so that you have continuous 9 years of education, so that you acquire the basics. But again, this is the policy. But the idea is that after this 9 years of junior secondary school, you could decide to even stop there. You could have been given adequate skills, you know, to live happily and be an apprentice elsewhere, and then get a job, just like what my boss was talking about here. You know, so, but many states have abandoned this idea, largely because it's expensive. Because you have to bring in a lot of pre-vocational education, you know, tools, and it's really, really expensive. We tried it in Adamawa State, in Nyako, and he established 10 vocational technical training centers with skills, with tools, everything from Germany, German system. You know, German education is based on entrepreneurship. Yeah, and it cost us, I'm sure, not less than 100 million euros. Yes. But guess what? The first 3 years, the graduates, as they completed their studies, there were big, big companies, German companies, coming to you. Before we realized it, they picked all of them. The second year of graduation, they came and picked all of them. It's like we were providing, what do you call it? Labor, yeah, force. But our intention was for them to actually stay in Adamawa, establish their businesses, and then, you know, gradually pay us some tax. Yeah, because very expensive. Yeah, so it's still 6334 system. But how can we make it in? How can we implement it? That's the issue. It requires a lot. You have to train people in all sorts of. And then there will also be those who are academically oriented will go to senior secondary school. Those who are vocational oriented will go to technical. State governments, especially here in the north, until they decide to change their course of action and invest heavily at this lower level of education, we are doomed. That's the truth. We are doomed. In 2009, when I was chairman of SUBE, I came up with this idea. I said I didn't like these Al-Majiri schools. I didn't like it. I'm a Muslim. I memorized the Quran. I translate the Quran. But I didn't like the Al-Majiri system. And I knew it's a time bomb. I drew the attention of the world in Tanzania in 2009 on this. And so as chairman of SUBE, I said, I'm going to give 5% of the entire budget to integrate the Al-Majiri schools into formal. The first opposition I had was from my secretary of the board, who, understandably, he looked at it. I'm a Muslim, he's a Christian. He said, sir, you know, this Christian group looks at this as if we are taking money and we are financing the Muslim. I said, look, my secretary, Prof, and he's a professor. I said, let me tell you, you are sitting on the bomb. If you don't educate these children the right way, just one of them has great problem for you. Just one of them. Do you know what? We were still in the office in 2012 when Boko Haram started. And he ran to me. I said, sir, Chairman, you see what you're talking about? I said, I told you. Educate them, remove them from this indoctrination. Provide them the quality education. Spend money. Save this problem. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble. And you understand? You can see what is happening to the entire north. Even here in Abuja, Boko Haram are still here and there. And they are still there. And unfortunately, anywhere you see insurgency, especially nowadays, it hardly ends. It's only managed. Yeah. Bad lecturers in universities, how do we rid ourselves of them? I think I was initially talking about, there are many things. This power asymmetry that I talk about is very, very key. I'm happy I've been following keenly this sexual harassment bill. So though I wanted it to be actually more encompassing than it is. It's about radical approach. My senior colleague went to Sussex. and many radical people went to Sussex. Babagana Kingibe went to Sussex. Rimi went to Sussex. Thabo Mbeki went to Sussex. Many. Actually, one ambassador of Nigeria, UK ambassador in Nigeria, told me that in those days, if they want you to be radical, they send you to Sussex. But there's nothing wrong with radicalism. Look at things differently. It's about looking at things differently. We have to change our policies. We have to advocate. The universities must have their own internal policies that are known, that will protect individuals, that will promote human rights, that will promote democracy in education. In 1992, I was in my final year, and I had this bitter exchange with the lecturer in the classroom. I remember telling him that you are so myopic. I swear to God. I told him. And he took it seriously. In the classroom, he told me that if I am teaching this course, you will not pass. And I said, if I am sitting in this course, I will pass. I'm not joking. I swear to God. After the class, a colleague came to me. He said that Salihu Gire, they call me Gire, you see, finally, let's go and beg this man. When he finished, I asked him, Shehu, I remember his name. I said, Shehu, yeah. I said, how old are you? He said he was 27. And I said, I'm only barely 20. So if I spend 7 more years in this university, it's still okay. I'm telling you, I swear to God, if that happens, university will be And I got an A in that course.
Wow.
Right.
I prepared myself. I was ready to go to court, to go to Senate and then to court. I was ready. I prepared myself. I had 3 questions. I answered with 3 booklets. Each answer, I gave it a whole answer booklet. 3 hours was. I swear to God, wallahi. So, there's something there. I can tell you, when I was doing my master's in Jos, 95, 97, my supervisor was complaining about victimization. He had not been promoted. I said, sir, maybe you are not productive. In his house, I told him, sir, maybe you are not productive. If you are productive, you have been a professor. He kept quiet. But he was a reverend father, so maybe that's why he didn't. I didn't bother. I really didn't bother. You understand? So I'm not saying that you should always give your head for coconut. but you have to. You know? So, and this is the best way to address it. You tell the lecturers. You form, and not all of them are bad. Few of them are. There are some of them who are ready to help, ready to even help you. If you speak out. So speak out. Don't compromise. You know, there's always the question of resistance versus compromise. Whenever someone wants to, oppress you, you know, I remember Foucault's power of authority or the theory of power. You can always resist through many ways. Yes. I'm telling you, if your wife doesn't want you to eat okra, you don't eat okra. You tell her you want okra, she will never say no. She will say she went to the market, she didn't get the okra. You go and bring back the okra, she will tell you she was busy praying, the thing compound. Anyways, in a way that she will not do it and you will not understand even that she's trying to resist it. So we have to, that's why we have to be skillful. We have to think within and outside the box. The last question is this issue of education financing, financing innovation. That's a very, very important question. I believe education is on the concurrent list, and everybody should. At TETFUND, with effect from this year, we have my department actually is funding innovation. You know, and we're starting with 12 centers of excellence, and we have, in fact, we set a lot of money on collaboration and innovation. You know, and we're also advocating for national foundation, you know, for innovation, research and innovation, because without which we cannot make any progress. We have to have this foundation. You know, we are playing with investment. United States, their National Science Foundation, do you know how much they spend per annum? An average of $500 billion. Yes. And you keep saying you also want to be as to America. You have to invest. You know? And you don't wait for industries. Because industries are money-making ventures. They only invest in the R&D areas where they can make money. But Nigeria as a government, we went to Israel and I was thrilled. Israel has an agency that funds innovation. And do you know what is their motivation? They are ready to give you money to invest and you fail. They want to learn why you fail. Here, in other words, they take 80% risk. No bank will give you loan to take risk. You understand? But innovation. But they make a lot of money. They gave us one instance where they invested $1 million. And the thing clicked. And the guy made $3 billion out of that. And they took the tax of over $300 million. So they put in $1 million, they got $300 million. The guy got over $2 billion out of it. I hope you understand. Yeah, so that's where we're heading to. My department in TETFUND is trying to make sure that we have this foundation in this country so that there will be money for innovation. There will be money where we invest whatever crazy ideas you have. If you say you want to go to, you know, just think of it. If someone had not supported the brothers, we wouldn't have had airplane. Because when someone was thinking, the Wright brothers, when someone was thinking of want to have something that will fly with people, ordinarily will say, this was Onyara, something. You know? Yes. I hope you understand. So the government itself, and that's why we are funding. We have R&D standing committee now that we are going to launch, and we are really going to advocate to make sure that we have this foundation that will fund innovation in Nigeria. And then finally, what policies to adopt to make our education valuable? Somebody asked that question. Online. And generally we have to, for me, we have to make sure that our education works. We should focus towards making sure that we have functional education. Education that pays. You know, not schooling. Yes. You know, and we should de-emphasize these certificates. I went to a hospital at Sussex, and the nurse was asking me, because she told me I was looking at video and went through my profiles, was calculated. Why are you wasting your time to do a PhD? You know, and since then I told many people, you don't actually need a PhD. A PhD should only give you the qualification to teach. Unless if you want to teach, you don't need a PhD. True, sir. Otherwise, it's a waste of investment. You know, so our policy should focus on, one, let every child get quality, functional, basic education. Believe me, you will be fine with basic education if it is functional.
Yes, sir.
You know, someone told me in Crown Agents that he had not seen any country that is so educated than Nigeria. Almost everybody we meet has a master's degree. He was appreciating it, but he kept quiet. And I said, but. He said, yeah, and because he knew, he wanted to say something. I knew it's not all over. It's like if everybody has a degree and master's degree, then why are we where we are? Yes, I hope we understand this. So I think we need to really have a look of the education policy. And even this issue of concurrent list. You know, yes, the federal government's main responsibility is that of standards. Actually, maintaining standards, basic, secondary school. That is their main function constitutionally. Local governments have the responsibility to provide basic education. And then state government has the responsibility mainly to provide secondary education. That's what the policy is saying. But it's not working. It's not working. And when Obasanjo came in, you know, he was also another radical person.